Hi, I'm Lauren Consul. I'm the mental health educator at IVC. In this video, we're going to be talking about cognitive distortion. So what is a cognitive distortion? Well, it's a pattern of irrational thoughts where we view things as more negatively than they really are. It's essentially viewing the world through a faulty or inaccurate lens. I kind of think of it as we're putting on glasses with the really wrong prescription. So we're seeing the world and what's happening in it, but it's really distorted. We're not seeing it in a way that is actually accurate. It's just a little bit off. And this is really important when we're viewing things that don't feel accurate, when they aren't really based in the reality of what's happening, can have a really big impact on us because our thoughts are really, really powerful. And we want to start paying attention to the thoughts that we're having and noticing when we're having these thoughts that aren't really based in reality, because then we want to bring them back to reality, which we'll talk about in a different video. In this one, we're just focusing on how to start noticing these thoughts that are unhelpful for us. So cognitive distortions, like I said, are these ways of kind of faulty thinking. And there's a lot of common types of cognitive distortions. And we're going to go over just some of the most common ones today. So what I really want you to get out of this video is to be able to start paying attention to your thoughts, to be an active consumer of your thoughts. It's not as important that you necessarily memorize these types of cognitive distortions, but really start paying attention to thoughts that you're having and noticing which categories you tend to fall into, and noticing when you're having unhelpful thoughts. Because the first thing we have to do to change something is to notice it. And we need that because we have to know what's wrong in order to fix it. It's like your car. If you bring your car into the shop, you first have to figure out where the problem is, and then you can figure out what you need to do about it. Same with our thoughts. We first need to identify the thoughts that are unhelpful, and then we can do something about it, which again, we'll talk about what to actually do in another video. Today, we're just focusing on starting to notice these thoughts. So we're going to go through some of the most common cognitive distortions. And what I want you to do is just pay attention to see where you kind of fall into, which ones that tend to come up for you. We all will do some of these at one point or another, but we tend to fall into 2 or 3 of these categories more often than not. So just start paying attention to which ones you notice yourself do more than others. So the first cognitive distortion is filtering. So filtering is where we take the negative details and magnify those details while filtering out all other positive aspects of the situation. So this is like an example of if you have a performance review at work or even at school, if you get a paper back and you get all this really positive feedback, but then there's one area or one aspect that you have to work on. And what filtering is focusing only in on that negative or the thing that you have to improve on, rather than taking in the whole picture, that there's a lot of positives that happened. And you're just filtering all that out, almost like that doesn't matter. I'm focusing in on this negative piece. All right. So this also can happen in relationships. Another example of this, where our partner maybe does something one time, and that's the one time we focus on that negative thing that they did. We forget about all those positive times that they did the opposite thing. So again, it's filtering out and only focusing on that negative. Does this sound familiar, like something maybe you do? Maybe it does, maybe it's not. Let's look at some other cognitive distortions. So we have all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking is seeing things in extremes. Everything's all good or all bad. It's black or it's white. No, there's no gray in between. So one example of this would be if you're on a diet and you're not supposed to eat, a piece of cake or ice cream. And you're on the diet and you take a bite of that cake or that ice cream and you go, up, that's it, I've ruined my diet. I might as well just finish the whole cake, eat the whole tub of ice cream because it's over, it's done. It's that good, it's all good or all bad, that black or that white. When in reality, because here you didn't really ruin your whole diet by having one bite, but if you're living in those extremes, it's either this or it's that, it's going to feel that way. Another kind of example of this is when we make kind of categorizations of people. You know, all lawyers are untrustworthy. All men or all women do this or do that. Because really the truth is there's gray in between. Yes, some lawyers might be untrustworthy, some are trustworthy, and there's a whole bunch in between. So as you can see, remember going back to that example of putting our glasses on, this is seeing the world not how it really is. It's seeing it a little bit wonky. And that's problematic because if we're seeing this world in extremes or not how it quite is, it's really hard for us to do something about it because we're not really based in reality. So we'll talk again more in a different video about how to actually challenge these thoughts and what to do with them. But again, today, I want you just to be focusing on what thoughts, cognitive distortions you tend to have. Next one I want to talk about is overgeneralization. So overgeneralization is when we draw a conclusion about something based on a single incident or a single piece of evidence. So this is like if you interview for a job and you didn't get the job and you start to think, you know, no one is going to want to hire me. I will never be hired here. Right? So you're taking one piece of information and you actually maybe don't even know why you weren't hired and saying now no one will ever want to hire me. Also, going back to partner example, if you have a partner and you're thinking, you know, they make one mistake and you think they're always going to be that way. They're never going to do this, right? Taking it and that one instant, that one piece of evidence and extrapolating it to all the others, even if that's not really what's based in reality. So again, this is taking one piece of evidence and going outwards, which is not really based in that reality. You're having those wonky glasses on. Because just because you didn't get hired at one job doesn't mean you're never going to get hired or that no one will want to hire you. Next one is jumping to conclusions. And there's two types here I want to talk about. And the first is mind reading. Now, mind reading is when we make assumptions about the thoughts and actions of others without adequate evidence. So this could be like if you're a few minutes late to work and you're thinking, everyone noticed I'm late, everyone is thinking about it. You're assuming the thoughts of everybody else when in reality, you don't really know that. It may have been just a blip on their radar, but you are focused on that they must be thinking it. Or if you have a friend and you're with them and they're upset about something and you're thinking they're mad because of something I did, when there's nothing really to show that they're mad at you, that you did anything. But you assume like that's what they're thinking, that you are a bad person, you did something bad. You're assuming their thoughts. Now I want to be clear here because it's not about lying to yourself in the sense, like sometimes these things might be true. Sometimes people might be thinking certain things. But what we want to really pay attention to is when we're making these kind of big leaps, like we're putting these glasses on and really seeing the world out of focus. So we want to pay attention to what is the reality and what am I seeing right now? Now, the second type of jumping to conclusions is fortune telling. So fortune telling is when we predict a negative outcome without realistically considering the actual odds of that outcome. So this is like if you have a presentation tomorrow and you're saying, I know I'm going to bomb it, even though you've studied and you've prepared and you're ready for it. Right? The evidence doesn't really show that you're going to bomb it, but you are saying, I know this is going to happen. So you can see these are jumping to these conclusions. You don't know what people are thinking. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, and yet that's where you're going to. So you can see where this is putting on those glasses because we don't know those things. So you're not seeing really the reality of what's going on. The next one is catastrophizing. So catastrophizing is focusing on the worst possible explanations for something rather than more likely explanations. So again, let's say you're at work and you got some constructive criticism and you're thinking, you know, I'm gonna get fired. And when I get fired, I'm gonna not be able to support my family and we're not gonna be able to, you know, we're gonna be out living on the streets. Like we are just not going to be able to do anything. And this is all from one piece of constructive criticism. You are now going to where you have lost your home. right? So it's really going like in this extreme, when in reality, most likely, it's not going to lead down that path. Perhaps, again, perhaps maybe there's other things going on and you are on the path to getting fired. So again, it's about finding that reality balance. It's not about, we want to find what's really happening here. Well, again, we'll talk more about how to do that in another video, but today it's just, again, focusing on these unhelpful thoughts. It's always about, am I living in these extremes? Am I putting on these glasses and not seeing the world as it is? So another example of catastrophizing, it's like, say you get into a small argument with your partner and you think they're going to leave me, this relationship's over, and they're just going to leave me, and then no one's going to ever want to be with me, and I'm going to be alone forever, right? So it's jumping from that one small argument to I'm alone forever. So you can see it's these huge leaps, and that's not necessarily what's that reality of the situation. Next is personalization. So personalization is when we think that everything others do or say is some kind of direct or personal reaction to them. So maybe you at work and you work with clients and you're thinking, well, I didn't call that prospective client back fast enough, and that's why they declined our proposal. Rather than kind of looking at, well, the proposal kind of wasn't great, or it was higher than other bidders, or whatever it was. Or maybe your friend is in a bad mood at lunch and you're like, this is all my fault. They must be in a bad mood because of something I did, when really they're just having a crap day. So it's making it essentially about you. Always bring it like you have some sort of fault. And again, this doesn't mean that you're absolved of all fault or blame or have some sort of responsibility, but it's, again, looking at what is the reality. When we jump to these extreme personalizations, it must be about me. Are you wearing those glasses or not? The last one I want to talk about is shoulds. And a lot of us do this a lot. Now, shoulds tend to appear as these rules about how everyone should behave, right? And they can feel like these hard and fast rules that we have. And it makes us live in these realities that aren't very helpful for us. And someone breaking your rules may make you feel mad, or if you break your own rules, you may feel guilty. So it's like, I really should exercise. I shouldn't be so lazy. And the problem with shoulds is we're really spending time and energy on fantasy. Shoulds aren't really what's based in reality. So you want to bring yourself to the present so you can make, effective choices to live with the reality of what's happening now, not what you should have done in the past or should do in the future. You don't have to like it, but to accept it is to recognize, well, what is happening right now? Okay, so those are the most common cognitive distortions. There's more out there. There's different types of categories, and as you can tell, some of them seem very similar. So again, this isn't about trying to memorize the different types of categories, but really to start getting you thinking about the thoughts that you have. If nothing else you take away from this video, I really want you to just start thinking and becoming aware of the thoughts you have, because so often we are passive consumers of our thoughts. We just let them kind of rummage around in our head, but our thoughts are really powerful. We want to know what thoughts are happening and recognize the ones that are helpful versus unhelpful. And that's really the point of cognitive distortions. It's not so much about being able to say like, oh, that's personalizing or that's catastrophizing, but really just starting to notice of, is this thought based in reality or not? Am I seeing this situation through my how I'm supposed to see it, or do I have my glasses on with the wrong prescription? I hope that was helpful in getting you to understand a little bit more about some of the unhelpful thoughts. We'll continue to talk in other videos about what to do with those thoughts, because just starting to recognize your thoughts is just the first step. Again, going back to that car example, if you first figure out what's wrong with your car, you then have to do something to fix it. So we'll talk in other videos about what to do.